hired Banksy to make that. That would be like mad props to Banksy. No, there's a guy, I think there's an undersecretary of whatever the hell they call making money. There's a guy who signs in the event that the Secretary of the Treasury can't sign the bill on the day. What a job. There's a guy who invented the McRib. Anyway, now we have enough people in this room. We're going to start. Hi, my name is Zathro. I doubt anyone in this room actually knows who I am. That's fine. You may know who Rex is, although you probably don't know him in his man-sona. You probably know him from his first sona, Rex. He's the tallest husky around.
Big, tall, husky, tall puppy, big puppy,
He husky things. I follow him around sometimes.
Usually one of the tallest dogs around.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
I'm a painted dog. You may have seen me lurking around. I'm also dressed up as Toriel because Toriel's in fashion right now. We're here to talk about fur in the wider world, I think is the name of this panel. And in essence, I want this to sort of be conversational because I can't know everything about what's going on. Like, there's a group of furs, I live in Orlando, and there's a group of furs that meets in Orlando, 30, 40, depending on what day it is. We can get, once a month, we can get a bunch of people together. But everybody just talks about how much they hate the rest of the world while that's happening. They don't want to be part of it. We talk about fur conventions like they're home. And that may just be me, that may just be, I mean, Rex, your experience within this community is crazy eccentric.
Yeah.
Rex has not been in this community for 30 years. He didn't found the furry community. In fact, we've been furries for almost exactly the same amount of time.
Yeah, it was about 2013 for me.
Yeah, that's the same year for me. There's so little to it. And your introduction to it was by absolute happenstance.
Yeah, it was. I mean, geez, I'm old enough to almost be some of these people their grandfather. But anyway, well, you want me to go ahead into it now?
Sure. Why not?
Well, anyway, I was driving to work, gosh, I don't want to say how many years ago, and overheard, I believe it was Bob and Tom, they're talking about furries and this and that, and dressing up in costumes, and they're laughing all the time like they do. Wow, that's really interesting, you know. Halloween was like the greatest time of year when I was a kid, because I could dress up in costume, and it was great, it was normal, and everybody looking at me, so I could do all that, and it was great. Anyway, fast forward. So I get back to, my desk, and, on my computer, and I always get to work early, so I gotta get the coffee going, so you can tell I drank a lot of coffee, because I'm talking really fast. So anyway, I get fired up, and I'm like, oh, I'm searching furries, and I go, oh, well, that's not him, that's not any of that. Holy crap, I gotta shut my computer off, delete all my cookies, and all that stuff. That's not really what I'm into,
What year was this?
Gosh, this is probably maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, okay, so it's been a long while.
Been a while. So then I'm like, okay, well, darn, that's not it. So I go off and just be a regular human doing all kinds of crap you do as a human. And my sister's an anthropologist. Actually, she gave a panel here on avians here back in 2013.
Just
anyway, anyway. So she teaches a class in
Anthrozoology?
Anthrozoology. Thank you so much.
Why do I know?
Well, anyway, and she touches on that a little bit about furries, and she was talking about a class she was about furries, and I just started chuckling, started laughing because I saw this stuff in that. And she goes, "Oh no, it's not what you think. It's not what you think." I started talking about it in class, and the kids stood up in class and said, "Hey, I'm a furry," and set the whole class straight what the furry was. And I'm like, "Oh wow, that's different." And I said, "I don't know what I hit for those." On the internet, so I got it, and I'm looking it up, and oh my gosh, I hit all the right sites that time. Then I got on YouTube, I'm done. This dancing dog is, I'm in. This is good. So I'm like, okay, commission. I gotta get commission. I gotta find an artist. So boom, got an artist. Boom, this is it. So okay, here's the money. It's like I actually got up like 3 o'clock in the morning. I gotta send that money. PayPal. Okay, here it is. Boom, there's the money. Boom, okay. When's the hardware store open? I gotta get about 8 rolls of duct tape. I gotta get some duct tape. So it's like, that was like Saturday morning. Boom, I got that sent out. It was like Sunday, okay. We're after church, we're doing a duct tape dummy, and then Monday morning, it's next day, air it out. I was like, boom, this is it. Pull plunger, this has been it. Yes, I've been this my whole life. This is it. So boom, so my life's just been exciting ever since.
Welcome home.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's coming home.
Yeah. And contact point number 1, complete disaster. Contact point number 2 with one person for a class, and you said they don't even have, your sister does not do a full class on furries. She does 15 minutes on furries.
Yeah, it's about 50 minutes tops,
and now he's here.
Yeah. And I've gone back to that class twice in full suit.
That's all it
And
took.
I'm only there 10 or 15 minutes, and these kids just go nuts. I mean, the first time I was in there, I thought, oh, they're going to come out, they're going to want, what about all this sex stuff and all this yiff stuff and all that? Nobody ever brought it up. I was so disappointed, but no, anyway. It's like, oh, wow, you know, who made your suit? How'd you design this? How'd you come up with your name? And they were just like so into it. And the kids stayed after class and wanted to know more and more and more. And it was so awesome. So,
and all you had to do was be there in person to have all of that impression.
Just had to be there.
Yeah.
You know, I have to admit that resonates with my own personal experience.
How long have you been in?
Let me describe it. So some of you might know I come from Russia. And for a while, I worked in a school, and I ran into a particular girl who was like, I believe, second or third grader. No, nobody ever knew that I am a furry. I did.
Of course not.
No, nobody else did. I mean, other than the furry circle, nobody in the real world knew that I'm a furry. And she didn't know anything about furries either, and she was too young to browse the websites, not to mention that internet in Russia at that time was not very widespread. She behaved an awful lot as a furry. She said, I'm Lance. She furry. She did all the furry stuff. She didn't know what was furry. And she just felt like it. So, your experience, your own experience, very, for me, resonates very much with that. Because my belief is that furries are really people in themselves. They just need to discover what that is.
Absolutely.
And that's called initiation. Yeah, and so because I did initiation at heart, and you encountered it in your own way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, you have to hit a
That
trigger.
confirms my.
Oh, that's. I don't think. I mean, raise your hand if you or someone you are very familiar with, if that sounds like the way they got into this, that they should have always been here and they just didn't know that this was the place that they should be. Raise your hands.
Yeah, well, for me it was in a similar way, but I did that all myself. I discovered, I got touch, whatever, but.
You got lucky. You cracked that code yourself.
That was 1995.
Wow. Good job, man. That would require like serious.
Yes, because there were and again in Russia there was internet.
Yeah,
that didn't exist.
That's like wall after wall after wall.
Yes.
I mean, and I have a very similar experience. I knew about furry for a long time. I know I was a furry back when I was 13. I'm 26 now. I knew I was 13. I knew I was when I was 13 after my first crush, which was on, as some of you may know, Ratchet the Wombat, which I kind of just put in the back of my mind as being another weird thing about me, because I was also left-handed, way into computers, Aspergerian, didn't like team sports, and an overactive imagination, which a lot of people in this room probably can identify with a couple of those things, but I didn't know that's what furries were at the time. So, that just sat and festered for a long while, and then I went to MegaCon one year. It was the first con I'd ever gone to. It was in 2013. And I went there for the same reason a lot of people go to conventions, to hope that there's a group somewhere out there for you. Like you specifically, you'll find a thing that you're passionate about that you can't talk about with your normal friends because they're not cool enough to know all the inside dirt on whatever you happen to like. And I didn't find that until the last half hour I was at MegaCon, when a white wolf fursuit just happened to be walking around. Now, For those who don't know, and why should you? MegaCon and Furry Week in Atlanta are counter-programmed. They are on the same weekend, or at least they were on 2013. So it was basically by the grace of some higher entity that this even happened. And when it did, all it took for me to make this switch was to see a fursuiter in person behaving the way fursuiters do. And I felt like a sleeper agent, like Manchurian Candidate style, and my trigger word was a dog on 2 feet. Like, it broke my head for a little while. I had gotten out of college, I had a stable job, I assumed based on the way I acted the rest of my life that I was a psychopath, and I was just gonna deal with that. And then it turned out, no, I'm a furry. And so I spent 9 days in hotel rooms, because I was flying around on business trips. Props to cognitive dissonance, by the way. Being able to shake people's hands and say, yeah, I'm doing fine, how about you, when they ask you how you're doing, in the middle of just your brain being on fire, like, props to that. But I basically went through every major memory I had for about a decade, and went and just added, because I'm a furry, to the end of it, and suddenly all of it made sense. And that was relieving eventually, but it was insanely stressful at the time. I still refer to that moment in my life, those 9 days, as the 9 days to my friends, because that's just, it was that. I lost 10 pounds in 9 days. It was fun. And I've actually done that since. But that's neither here nor there. I'm in the same boat. There was basically, all I had to do was get the exposure, because I knew about furries, I knew about animalistic art of all of its forms. I'd been on the internet, and I knew that the internet wasn't very kind to us most of my life. But it turns out that being there in person is what it takes. And the reason I convened this panel was the wider world. The way that we interact with the wider world, sure, it's nice to have more allies than enemies, and we could be doing more to help with that. But the thing I want to make absolutely sure that we're doing is identifying people who need to be here so that they show up here. Because, I mean, it's fine to have the apathy of the public. It's fine for people to go, oh, they're just having fun, whatever, and to, hide the seedier elements so that we don't accidentally destroy ourselves, shoot ourselves in the foot. The media, which we do all the time, I mean, our favorite tagline, the one that we generated, was "Furries ruin everything." And a lot of people take a weird, perverse, gleeful pride in that. I saw you smirk.
I was agreeing. No, I'm agreeing with you that this is, yes, this panel was everything.
No, it's horrible that it comes to that, but I think it's so important, because without that, again, I was perfectly willing to accept that I was just broken without this here. And that, I'm not going to say fixed it, at least I know what's wrong. And because I'm here, being in this room turns furry from an abnormality into a normative thing. Because a furry who's alone, and furry the way that I understand it, and I assume, I guess I'll ask the question, raise your hand if you're willing to raise your hand. This is a very easy way to get science out of this. Raise your hand if being a furry is existentially important to you. Of course. You're going to give me trouble the whole panel, I can see.
I don't need to.
You might have heard of that phenomenon called the hardest part is being the second person. There was sufficiently famous, I believe, clip on YouTube where some guy dances. There's a lot of people on the beach, and some guy just starts dancing. And he dances and dances and dances, and then somebody else stands up and starts dancing with them. Then within 15 seconds, a third guy stands up and starts dancing. And the next, and the next, and the next.
That's why dancing can't be legal.
And then the entire beach dances. So the hardest part is to be the second. Because when you are the first one, you are some kind of crazy man out there or whatever, but when you have a follower,
yeah,
people start seeing that following is okay.
When you're in this building. it's not a problem.
Yes, and now when you see when everybody sees one guy is following, that outlander is no longer alone. He has a follower. Maybe there's something about what he's doing, and then boom, in no time everybody's dancing. So being second is the hardest part.
Yeah, no, it certainly becomes an issue. I apologize for having these notes up here. I'm way over prepared for this. Rex,
Yes.
so you have a fursuit,
Yes.
and you've been around in it a lot.
Yes.
Name some of the places that you have fursuited.
I fursuited at a church before. Come on, think about it. It's just amazing.
The apathy is great.
I was laying in bed, and it's like, you know, they're having a car show at our church, kind of an outreach to the community, and I just stayed home in bed. So I kept calling him, I want you to come and do that thing you did. What? Come here and put that dog thing on. So you sure? I said, come on. I was like, okay. So I go to the church and I go, okay, I'm going to the basement of the church, find a place to change into my fursuit. I'm like, it's kind of like something unholy in a holy place. Anyway, so I went and put my suit on. People went nuts. I mean, there are people in their 80s are just laughing. A guy come up and hug me. Kids coming up, and it's like, oh man, it felt so great. Well, I was just totally blown away. I mean, to hunt positives, you know, that sounds like almost like a negative. It just went so great. It was just so, people just loved it.
In the last possible place someone would assume that would happen, outside of a physical manifestation of 4chan.
And I've suited at the, actually I've done that twice now at the church. Now this year, they said, they pulled me in the meeting for formation of this big car show and stuff. They had this, we want to have more of these like furry things. Can you get more of these furry things to come to this? I kid you not. I said, really? I said, okay, well I could probably get a few. I said, you know, yeah, we want more of those furry things. People like that. I said, okay. I said, you know, there's kind of a negative thing, kind of, that's fine, just bring them on. So, you know, we want to, okay, we can do that next year, no problem.
You tried to do it backwards. You tried to warn them against it. And they're like, yeah, whatever, it'll be all right.
During the service, I mean, during the service, they asked about.
Oh, no, it's nothing like that. No, it wasn't like that. No, I haven't done that yet.
Is there anything wrong with that?
Is there
I
a
don't
place
know.
for it? That's the thing. Would there be a reason to do it? Like in extracurricular activities in the church, it makes perfect sense.
We had one lady in the church who organized different things like that, just trying to think of ways she could work a dog into it, and never got around to it. But anyway, yeah, I don't think.
And one Pope's recent speech, like church needs to imagine itself to attract younger followers again to go with it.
Was it a Catholic church?
No, it was a Lutheran church.
See, it wouldn't even matter.
But anyway, it was fun. I mean,
First Lutheranism, then Catholicism.
That's the schedule. But anyway, the other thing, local civic organization, they have pumpkin races. Small town in Illinois, they have pumpkin races each fall. I don't know. They put wheels on pumpkins and the kids roll them down the street. But a little prize, something like that. I've done that for 2 years. Had a friend with me, Electropod did it this year. They came to us and said, this is fantastic, we want you to come every year. You know, bring as many as you can, it's great, the kids love it, people love it, it's just amazing. I haven't had really a negative thing outside the fandom suiting yet.
Now, will say,
Yeah.
you're maybe not alone, but I think you did get lucky in a couple respects on that.
Yeah.
If only because I've heard a lot of other stories. There's a reason our tagline is the one it is. But you'll notice something in the through line. You only brought up the sex thing one time in that whole conversation as a warning to the people who were there. You essentially did not give them a shot to accidentally find out anything terrible about this because you served as a full-time ambassador for our organization while that was going on.
Yeah, I did my absolute best, and you know how your vision's reduced being in suit, so I was always cognizant of the fact, okay, there's little kids running around me, I'm so tall, where exactly are my hands? Would they be any place that might even be conceived as being kind of questioned? So I'm always kind of very very aware, because I don't want anything to look really bad. Other place that I've suited 2 years now, this place down in Peoria called Wildlife Prairie Park. Been invited back. There, if you suit out in public, you'll have to provide your real name, possibly social security numbers, driver's license numbers, because there's a lot of pedophiles out there. Places just want to make sure. I know there's an incident at one zoo in the Midwest. They had a thing for Halloween called Boo at the Zoo. I know they have one here by Chicago. The smaller zoo, they had one. A bunch of guys in suits just showed up on their own. Well, that was nice. Everybody kind of liked it. After a while, the zoo's going, who are these adults running around in these suits? Well, they called the cops on them. So that was, well, the zoo's got to protect themselves. So there's a bunch of little kids running around. Why there's the adults here in these suits,
And they didn't ask.
Yeah, they didn't. They got to.
Just ask.
Yeah, got to ask.
There's an old mantra about asking forgiveness rather than permission. Whoever thought of that is an asshole. Just ask. People are it turns out, if you're willing to ask people, they're way nicer than you can imagine. There's a, I think it's Adam Savage of the Mythbusters talked about this. If you want to do something illegal, tell the cops. Because as soon as the cops are on your side, you don't have to worry about it. That's how they get away with doing all the nonsense they do on the Mythbusters. They tell the cops they're doing it, which no one thinks of at first blush, but it makes some sense. Like, it's one of those things you just don't think to ask. But if you do, suddenly you're in control of the situation in a way you wouldn't be otherwise. Because otherwise you're forcing other people to come to conclusions about what you're doing. I mean, if you just showed up in a fur costume, people would have to ask you what the hell is going on. But because you had someone there who could vouch for you, because they know that you're not that crazy, it worked out. And that's all it took. Like, people, this will be a refrain, a motif, if you will. We don't have even close to as many enemies as we think we do. Like, we tend to make enemies out of a lot of people, because a lot of people latch on to the other things in furry that tend to be a problem. We, as a group, tend to be pretty neurotic. I know I personally, on the ocean personality scale, my end score is 100. My brain's on fire. And that makes me wary around other people. But they don't want to hate you. Probably. There are a couple jerks. But generally speaking, they don't have a lot of friends either. Take a shot at it. Like, I understand I'm talking to people who are very anxious. I'm one of them, and I'm trying to do this partially as an experiment to see if I even can. And, I don't know, is it going okay? Fine.
Yeah.
I'll take it. Just ask. People don't want to. This is going to sound like it perfectly this is going to sound like it perfectly contradicts the thing I was just talking about, but I promise it doesn't. I was taught to do this. I hate that on airplanes, the Federal Aviation Administration finally said that you could keep your phone on the whole time. I love talking to people on airplanes. Because you get, unlike in a normal conversation where you get 5 to 15 minutes to talk about the weather, sports, and politics, all of which suck. No one wants to talk about any of those. You get 2 hours with someone, and if you don't hit it off, whatever, everybody goes back to what they were doing, no harm, no foul. You're on an airplane, if anybody starts shit will go down on an airplane. You're not in any danger. But I've had some of my most fascinating conversations in the world on airplanes because I have no idea who I'm sitting next to. They're apparently doing well enough to be on a plane. Other than that, it could be anyone. I've had fantastic conversations with them. But now that I'm a furry, I've had a fun twist on this, where I have a timing issue about where I bring up my favorite topic. I was on a flight back from Gen Con 2 years ago. I was sitting next to a daughter and a father who were board game distributors. They had never been to a convention before. They were not nerds in any proper sense. They didn't belong there. But they had a great time because it turns out that when you meet people, they're usually okay. I think Howard Stern actually has a thing on this. He can't make fun of people he's met because everybody's so nice in person. And anyway, Gen Con was fun for them. It was fun for me. We just traded stories for 2 hours on this plane ride, and the daughter and father were talking slightly distantly about how weird some of the things were. And I was just evilly thinking in the back of my mind, it's like, no idea you're sitting next to. So we're having this pleasant conversation. And then on the way to landing, there was a lull in the conversation. I said, do either of you know what a furry is? And the daughter says, no. And the father gets so much adrenaline pumped into his brain at that second that he can't speak, but he manages to say, I have. That could have been the end of everything. That could have been shit going down, maybe. And granted, like I said, I'm a little evil sometimes. I did get the sadistic twinge I was looking for of proving to these people that I'm an upstanding citizen, and also this is going on in the background. And that little cognitive dissonance, I do get a lot of glee out of this, but please don't miss the point. If I had said that up front, if I had said, do you know what a furry is the first part of that conversation, it would have been over. All I did was prove that I'm not a bad guy, and suddenly, whatever this, I didn't ask the father what context in which he knew what a furry was, other than to know it was bad. That was enough for me. But if I just started there, he would have been in control of the whole impression of what a furry was. He would just have to refer back to whatever was in the back of his head about what being a furry means, and I may never have talked to them. We wouldn't have had a fabulous conversation, by the way, at the end of which, even though once the blood got back into his head, I got a hug from both of them by the time I was off the plane. Like, that seems like a win to me. I don't know. In the other scenario, everybody loses because he gets to address it on his terms, and his terms suck for whatever reason, and it was up to me to fix them. And all I had to do was act like a normal person, just that little span of time, and I had to have fun with another human being for them to seem like I'm a good person to be around. Imagine, like, that's what they want out of a conversation. I apologize for being sarcastic. You're not supposed to do that when you're trying to do teachable things. But just be a nice person for the first little while. It works wonders for people's impressions of everything you are. All the labels suddenly get tinged with this part where it's like, oh, this is like, this person's all right. And most of the people in this room, when you're not just being jerks about it, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep picking on you because it's too much fun. Most people are not, what are you doing? I haven't seen you the whole convention. Anyway,
I know
lost
you're
my
here.
train of thought. Rex, how are you doing?
Doing great. Well, I'll tell you what.
Don't be a jerk. Don't be a jerk. Does that work? Is that the, I think that works.
I'm afraid that's not, I guess you were lucky. Because I had the exact opposite experience, and more specifically, I was talking to the person like for a few hours.
How long ago? What year are we
Maybe,
doing?
maybe a month.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was on Skype. And she had some, finally she asked, why is your avatar leopard? And I said, have you heard the word furry, the meaning of the word furry? And then there was explosion. And guess what? I mean, like, this totally blows my mind, because her biggest complaint was not that you are doing weird things, blah, blah, blah. Is that you are hugging people that you don't know. Not that you draw crazy horses with big dicks. Not that you like do stuff in fursuits. No, you are hugging people you don't know. That was what she was vehemently objecting against.
How well did you know this person?
Random.
Just random?
Online website.
The online thing is a bizarre, that's a bizarre element, and it's kind of a cruel irony. We're all in this room because of the internet. If we didn't get, because you can't walk up to someone, you can walk up to someone and make a Star Trek reference and people can go, oh, I love Star Trek. You can do no such thing in furry. You need the internet for the
Why not start with
context.
Star Trek then in conversations and lead into
And then lead into furry.
yeah.
I like
mean,
your
there-
style,
in the
but
canon, there are furry species.
that takes a while to do. That's what you need the breadth of the internet for. The internet short-circuited that. That's why it happened in the last 20 years.
So, I'm so sorry. It's just so funny that like I want to explain a little bit on it. So she was like, "Are you going to furry conventions?" Yes. She's like crazy. But look, hold on. People go to Star Trek convention. People go to like Transformers convention. Whatever. How is that okay? Well, you see, furries are about all kinds of stuff. So are you okay? Like, if you are okay for with people who go to Transformers convention, are you okay with me going to like let's say the Lion King convention? Yes, but it needs to be just Lion King. It cannot be Lion King and like Robin Hood and other Disney stuff. No, just like one time. Oh, that was just crazy. I'm sorry.
But we end up in this awkward spot where after having been informed by the internet, it seems like almost all of our success stories, with a couple exceptions, everybody is aware of, they happen in person. That seems like the easy ticket. All of your good experiences, they happen in person. All of mine happen in person. That seems to be a cruel irony we have to tolerate, where the prophets of the fur community got together on the internet and figured out that this was a cool thing, met in real life, found out it was an awesome thing. And now they have to spread the word, and there's something about seeing it in real life that makes the difference. And beyond the convention space, and we try to keep the conventions penned in, I mean, Uncle Kage has a smoke and mirrors tactic to the way that he controls the media around Anthropon, and for what it's worth, does an admirable job. I think he does more good than harm on it. But I wonder if it's missing something. All right, now I'm seeing all sorts of people here. I feel like we're missing something where we talk about, we try to talk around, you know, I believe a lot of people here are probably familiar with only 10% of us are sexual deviants. Like, we end up with these stupid little sound bites on the web, coincidentally enough, of people trying to defend the community, and they're either super defensive about everything, where they're essentially just trying to keep back the fact that everyone thinks we're flamboyant zoophiles, or they hide behind a couple of things that I just don't see as good enough to excuse everything we're doing here. We talk about all the activities that go on at these conventions. We talk about the charity work. We talk about celebrities that come by as guests of honor. There's a parallel we're drawing here that I think is really, really weird. Those are what churches talk about. Churches talk about all the extracurricular activities they do. They talk about how you meet all your friends. They form a community, and more than anything, you know, they're hostage against the onslaught of atheism over the last decade has been, we're charitable organizations. Most of them are charitable organizations. We're doing the exact same thing, but they're using a weapon we aren't in this fight. We're not talking about the really good part of this. We did a poll at the beginning, and we may as well take the poll again. Raise your hand if you're willing to raise your hand. Raise your hand if you believe furry to be existentially important to you in such a way that if it were to be removed from your life, it would cause you significant emotional or personal damage. That's a majority at least. And I guess we can bring the question back. How many of you would have a hard time replacing this in your life if it were to go away? That's almost everyone in this room. So what is it in that? You can replace activities, you can replace charity, you can replace everything this convention has except the furry part. The furry part has to stay. I was in this convention hall last year, schlepping around in Zathro, and at the elevator, just during a lull one day, I was approached by someone who didn't want a hug, didn't want a picture. They were asking for a friend that wanted a hug from me, but they were too shy to approach me. And the hug is really a pretty, raise your hand if you're a fan of hugs. You don't know what you're missing.
Great so far.
Well, yeah, we still love you. We'll let you stay around.
It's the beard.
The hug is really a pretty incredible symbolic physical gesture because the way you approach it is unmistakable. I mean, you do this for almost no other reason. So you approach, there is some amount of fear that is exchanged, there is a trust to it. You expose your sides and your front, if you're doing it right. You expose your side and your front to someone else, and they expose theirs to you, and you then cover and protect each other. Like the symbolism and even just physical, practical notion of what a hug is I would verge to call it profound. And yet, we end up getting that marginalized because we don't talk about it with any amount of reverence. This child, I'm going to call him a child, they may have been as old as I was, actually flinched and shrunk back from me when I first started approaching them. So maybe their friend, it was entirely possible, their friend was just an asshole who wanted to make them feel uncomfortable. But the hug has a natural defense mechanism against this, because after doing that, they then went like this. And the gravity of that tiny gesture, unmistakable, was enough that I was actually slightly afraid to approach them at that point, because I was intimately aware of how much this was suddenly going to mean to them. And we did it, and we meant it for about 15 seconds, and we were both very well off after that. I actually saw a smile on this person's face that didn't go away for the remainder of the time I was around them. Why does that story not come up? Why do we not talk about those stories? That is like the missing link. We have formed a community that is, and in that moment, I'm sharing fear with someone else, and we are confronting it together. And in fact, the stronger the fear is between the two of us, arguably the better off we are when it comes to the embrace. I mean, Rex, you agree with me on that? Yeah. We've done this a lot. Don't give me that look. But it's bizarre to me that we don't talk about that. We have managed to crack a code, sociologically speaking. We are, according to the IARP, according to NUCA, a handful of people here are probably familiar with Dr. Planning, runs a reputable shop figuring out what furries are on about, which we will be doing a highly disreputable version of that in the panel that comes right after this, so feel free to stay tuned for that. Furries may be the only example of dehumanization that has been studied by sociology that does not result in a drop in self-esteem. That is crazy. That is a thing that doesn't happen. When you dehumanize, it causes psychological damage of one form or another. And you may think a handful of furries are screwed up. Guess what, guys? A lot of people are screwed up. Not just us. Not just our problem. A lot of people drink. A lot of people have sex. You know, it's kind of weird. I wouldn't have guessed from the outside. But we've got this thing. And that's the thing that you share in person that you cannot share online. And we draw a lot of art trying to make up for the fact. We draw a lot of art to remind ourselves of what this is like. I do. I just wish that was easier to communicate. And I would implore anyone in this room who has the capacity to do so, to endeavor to find the people who may accidentally really need to be here and they just don't know it. Because, I mean, it's fine to have fur fans, it's fine to have more friends, but there are people here who, if this goes away, it will be a dramatic loss in their life, and they may not even be aware that it's here in the first place, because all they see is the Tumblr furry train wrecks, or they just search what is a furry online, and nonsense ensues. And granted, I love the eternal garbage fire that is the internet as much as anyone. I love going on 4chan. The hate is just, it's something I can use in my daily life to like appreciate the way people are in the back of their head. I love that. But there's something to this that we fail to convey. and I wish we could figure out, and we only have, what, like 15 minutes to figure it out, so hopefully in the next 15 minutes we're going to figure out how to solve this problem. But I feel like I've at least outlined it. Is everybody okay with that? Does everyone agree that this is a thing worth pursuing? Figuring out how to spread this correctly?
Oh yeah.
Raise your hand if you're willing to raise your hand. Raise your hand if you agree with that. All right, well, I feel like my job's done. How about you?
I would like a bit of clarification. When you talk about dehumanizing an application to authority, that word has multiple meanings if you
Oh, absolutely.
literally. Can you please expand on what exactly you meant?
I wish I could expand on it in a scientific sense. I'm sure Nuka has a specific meaning behind it, but it is the idea that you do not relate in some either mental or emotional way to the fact that you are human. Being a dog or a cat is rather directly dehumanizing.
Why I'm having this problem is that prefix D means removing something. While I, talking about foreigners, I wouldn't call it dehumanizing, I would call it animalizing, adding, not removing.
So you're one of the people, they had a survey question where they talked about if you feel less than 100% human. You're one of the people who would argue with that it's more than 100%.
Well, it did, once again, it did, you know, the problem I have with the surveys is that most of the surveys are built in a way the survey creator thinks about things. So if I feel 100% human and 100% animal for 200% total, that's entirely different feeling. But there's no such answer in this freaking survey. And I had to put like 50% animal, 50%.
Be careful of any surveys you take about the fandom. Don't quote me on that, but I'm telling you. Think about what this man said and what's on that survey. Think about it.
For what it's worth, Nuka's aware of it.
With all due respect, have you heard like about, have you ever taken like that IQ measurement test where they say like, you have a picture, which one is a combination of the other two? Or like, you know, kids were given like a human, a fish, a cat,
And you have to say human cat.
whatever, yeah. So like, and the right answer was like a human because it's too red, and the little girl pointed to fish, and then they said why? Because they said everybody else is warm-blooded and fish is cold-blooded. Her answer is perfect, but it's not the answer that the creators of the survey had in mind.
For what it's worth, as a public service announcement, the Stanford Binet IQ test has been a complete sham since about when it came out.
But I mean,
Don't worry.
I was just trying to illustrate. That's why I'm saying on that survey that I'm less than 100% human, because like I have to divide 200.
And that's a point Nuka's taken.
Confirmation bias.
Oh, absolutely. No, and that's something Nuka's been he's had to deal with over time, because it turns out we're a hard group to pin down. I mean, all it takes to be a furry is to say you're a furry. So it covers a lot of ground. Poems are what poets write. Furries are what furries call themselves. I mean, for crying out loud, we got furries that don't like hugs, apparently. If you stick around, I will fix it.
My personal opinion or whatever is more a definition. If 3 furries tell you that you're a furry, you're a furry.
So much peer pressure. Do we have any particular questions, comments about this? And this panel went half an hour. I'm perfectly satisfied with that.
Yeah, in regards to what you were saying about flying, I've had very similar experiences when taking Amtrak.
I can believe that. That sounds... Who's the weirdest, just completely out there? Was anyone weirder than you?
A few people.
Okay. That's good
Well,
to hear.
take it long enough, you'll eventually meet a few of them.
I was gonna say, instead of saying dehumanizing people so they act more like animals, maybe you could say humanizing animals acting more like people.
Oh yeah, well no, that's
That's
the anthropomorphized
anthropomorphic
animals
means
is you're adding to what being an animal is. That's absolutely, and that's part of the reason the dehumanization thing comes up is because that has a negative connotation on it. Dehumanizing automatically is, to your point, the prefix does mean to remove, but in our context, it really is more of a morphing into. Yeah. Okay, fine. That was the end of my sentence.
I was going to ask, in the context of spreading the fandom, I guess, what is it something that you look for in someone who could potentially benefit?
They look scared of it. They look scared of it. Most people, if they know what a furry is, there are basically two things you know one of two things about the furry community, or I guess most people are in one of two camps. They are either completely unaware of what the word means, which means they're over the age of 25, and the second group thinks we're all flamboyant zoophils.
That would probably come for everybody I work with.
I worked for a seed court
Because
company
it's
for the last
boundary.
few years. Oh my gosh, it jokes.
Who do you work with? Who do you work with? What kind of people do you work with?
It's boundary.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
In
great.
Wisconsin.
Wow, can you cast some stuff for me?
Shut.
Kirsch or Beaver Dam or... I'm sorry, you probably don't want to mention it.
You're way too excited
I'm
about
trying to
this.
remember. I'm sorry. I like Founders, sorry.
Did you work at the foundry?
No, I didn't. I always
Were you
They're
jealous?
kind of
Yeah,
dirty,
you were
hot
jealous,
work,
that's
but you got your parts of it.
I'm sorry, what was your question? I have a horrible memory.
I was just asking what you look for in someone.
Yes, sorry. No, it's people who tend to be sheepish, pardon the pun. They are people who have feelings inside, and I apologize for this just sounding super sappy, but this is just how it is. They're people who have these horrible, deep, dark little feelings inside about wanting to care about things too much. And the only way to coax those people out, it turns out, is to come into contact, is to expose them to big fluffy things, or to hug them, and I understand that's not right.
Should we crash protest?
I don't see why not. It wouldn't do any more damage. No, don't. You're a monster. I'm sorry, did someone say something? That person's outside.
I would like your opinion on something. So I work with I wouldn't call her black inside person, but she does not have a lot of compassion for other people. So she doesn't like a whole lot. I brought my suit in to the place where I work at, where they don't think I'm creepy or crazy. They think it's really cool. And so that.
What do you dress as?
Huh?
What do you dress as?
Amsap. Pickle.
This is for everybody else. I know what you dress as.
I
I'm
am
painting a word
an
picture.
American Staffordshire Terrier, Amstaff for short, but you can call me a pitbull. That's okay. That's how I kind of meant it to you guys. But that's a backstory for another time. So I brought her in, and her whole demeanor she just opened up, and that followed with that question with what would benefit someone in the fandom. Well, then she proceeded to tell me way more information than I needed to know, but it was still her opening up as, oh, this is pretty cool, as she was asking me more questions about it. It was kind of apparent that, well, where do you think I should go from there? I know, that's why I'm like, I'm just damn staff, I don't know what to do.
Does this person seem for?
She could be if she would stop being so hateful. And that's why I'm not trying to be anyone's
Time heals
guardian.
all wounds.
Huh?
I think would probably be the way to go with that. As long as you accidentally ruin at least part of this person's cerebrum, I think the damage will gradually fester. It helps. Once you are on a path to trying to actually understand what's going on in this community, there are plenty of ways to find how great it actually is. And as long as that, as long as you have not come across as a complete monster to them, you have tainted.
I've said some things I'm not proud of, but that didn't. I have. I've said some really mean things to her in response to her saying mean things to me, of course. Trying to be good.
It's not. I'm not saying this is easy. There's a lot of threading the needle to all of this.
But
It is-
she completely forgot about that, and it was crazy, and it happened all of a sudden. And I want her to keep opening up to it, because I think the fandom will help her in a different way than me.
Sure.
Because maybe then, again, she'll stop being so judgmental and hateful if she sees a bunch of animals roaming around, like that
That were not
cheetah
monsters.
and that ocelot. No?
Also true.
Close enough. If she is introduced to a fandom that is not about, for the most part, judging people for who they are.
And even if that fandom doesn't happen to be furry, you did your part. Like, there are plenty of other fandoms that are not complete garbage from the inside and out that you will have done your part to make humanity a little bit nicer for people with demons.
I tried the brony fandom, but that didn't work out. That really didn't. She looked at me like, and then I come in with a big old pit bull costume, and she's like, "This is
I'm
fantastic."
sorry, you had a question?
Not a question, but some comments. I'm real concerned. I wear the free t-shirt with the tail on it on the weekends quite often. At work.
Where do you work?
I work for Food Industry Trade Association.
Oh,
Office work for the most part.
the office.
I would bring in photos of fursuits. As far as fursuit stuff. And for the most part, all we had heard about furry was that infamous CSI episode.
Yeah, of course.
And of course, these people have particular work to talk about. I said, no. This is television, this is fiction. This is what we do. This is who we are. Don't ask me questions about what do you think we are. I'll tell you what is my root of the family is.
And they sort of implicitly trust you because they work with you.
Yes.
They're not just getting this from outer space. This is the difference between the media side of this and the non-media side of this that I think we need a distinction between. It's fine to use smoke and mirrors when you're talking to the media, because they have a detached understanding of what you're talking about, and for the most part, they're just getting sound bites. But in this case, it works better if you just directly tell them no. I'm sorry, can we let him finish and I'll come back to
The
you?
point is that there are many people who work with forest years.
Oh, shoot, roadblock.
Of course, it's a fun thing.
For Halloween, I weapons we have a Halloween party. Another local shopping mall. Again, where the furry stuff quite often. There's one of the clerks who identifies as furry, but she had gotten flack from other so-called furs and called them because they were telling her she isn't really a fur because she doesn't see.
Oh, well, that falls into its own.
That's hard.
Yeah.
If you think you're a furry, you're a furry. Don't be a furry.
Yeah.
Here's some resources, check them out.
We are dangerously inclusive.
Yeah, so talking about your questions she left. So for one, talking about CSI, what kind of profession do you work with? Just think about, like, there are shows about every single profession pretty much on the TV. Think about one of those shows and tell them, you remember that episode of such and such show? How much truth does it have in it? That was the same thing.
Yes.
But like, you use the example that they can relate to, so that you can attach one example to another and let play on their feelings. Because like every time I see like a show about like hacking computers, I want to kill them, you know. So the same thing. If they have the same feeling and then say that's CSI, same thing. You know, transfer the feeling. About that lady who left, I was going to suggest that I was wondering if she hugged that other lady, because that's actually neuroscience. Hugging actually releases in the brain like hormone called oxytocin. That is the one that is directly causing bonding. So that was proven in like many experiments. Have you seen those like baby monkeys who?
Oh, oxytocin's how you form tribal people. It is that drug.
Baby monkeys who had like in a cage with a bond and a surrogate mother, just like pretty much a doll in the shape of a monkey.
You can
the
do
ones,
horrible things to
and the
animals.
ones, yes, and the ones who could hug like that surrogate monkey, they grew up perfectly normal, and those who did not have any kind of other person to connect with, they grew up antisocial.
And as I think as much a capo as can be put on this panel, please be that surrogate mother for somebody. Find somebody to be that surrogate mother for. You only need to find one person, and you have done your job. It is now 4 o'clock. You can either stay. I'm about to switch we're about to switch, not us, but the next panel is basically the exact opposite of this panel. Here we were talking about the dire straits of potentially not finding lost souls. The next panel is where we're going to ask flash polling really stupid questions. So if that sounds fine to you, feel free to stay. Otherwise, thank you for participating.